Hey everyone, this is Ryan, and today we're going to look at creating an automatic timer to refresh our gallery once it hits 15 seconds. This will pull in the latest data set from Dataverse once the time limit has been hit. So the first thing that we're going to do is take a look at what we currently have in our app. So we have an add button. So whenever we add a new task to our gallery, it will automatically refresh for us. And we also have a refresh icon here at the top right of the gallery. So whenever a user manually clicks it, the gallery will refresh. So what we want to do is add a timer to our screen here that will automatically refresh every so often, depending on what timing we want to include. I would recommend 60 seconds to 2 minutes, but in our case here, we're going to use 15 seconds for demo purposes. So we're going to search for our timer component here. We'll add it to our screen. We'll change the name to gallery refresh. And there's a couple of variables that we want to change right away. So the first one is the duration. So we're going to change it to 15 seconds just for demo purposes, but of course use whatever you need. And the second that we're going to change is the repeat. So we're going to change this to true. Okay, so once it hits 15 seconds, it'll go back down to 0 and so on. Now, the next property that we want to change is the auto start property. Now, ideally, we would set this to true, but unfortunately, we're going to have to use a variable here. And the reason why is we want to leverage this refresh icon so that whenever a user clicks it, this timer goes back down to 0. So if you were to, for example, just reset the timer, use that function in here, what will happen is the timer will reset, but it won't start again. So what we want to do is leverage an environment variable, like a global variable, so that when the screen loads, it will auto start. And then when the user clicks the refresh icon here, we will turn off and turn on the timer so that it resets at that point. So to do that, what we're going to do is go to our onVisible property of our screen, and we're going to create a new global variable. We're just going to call it automatic refresh. And we're going to set it to true. So let's copy this variable. And we'll go to the timer gallery, timer here, and you'll go to the auto start property, and you'll see it's set to false. So what we're going to do is set it to the global variable. And then what you will notice is if we press play here, it doesn't start. So I find this is usually the issue with timers. It doesn't really register right away. So to avoid all the troubleshooting, trying to figure out why it's not working, what I do is I simply leave the app, leave the app, come back in, and then press play, and then it will work. It's just, for some reason, the timers don't get registered correctly if you're using the auto start property with a global variable. So if I press play, you will now see it starts counting up to 15 seconds. So at this point, we almost have our timer fully set up. Now what we want to do is decide what happens when the timer ends. So previously, we want to take what's currently happens in our refresh here, refresh button, and we're going to go to the timers on timer end property, and we're going to refresh the data set. We're going to paste that in. Okay, so that's all we need to do there. Now, what we also want to do, as I mentioned before, is whenever the user clicks the refresh icon here, we want the timer to reset back down to 0, because we just want to re-trigger the duration, because we don't want the user to click refresh at 14 seconds, then it refreshes again. We just want it to properly refresh every 15 seconds. Okay, so to do that, what we're going to do is turn off the automatic refresh And then what we will do is turn it back on. Sorry, and we're going to actually reset the timer as well. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to set the automatic refresh timer to false. We're going to reset the timer. And then what we will do here is we're going to copy this and we're going to turn it back on. Okay, so it's 3 simple steps at that point. So if we go back and press play on our screen, you will see that once it's counting up and I decide to manually trigger the refresh, it goes back down to 0 and starts counting up again. Okay, so let's go and actually add a record to the form here to make sure that a refresh is working. So what we're going to do is add a task. And we're going to say follow up on contract status. We'll just copy this. Put in our description, set a due date here. And we're just going to check where our timer status is at. So right now it's at 6 seconds. So we're going to press save and close and go back. So once it hits 15 seconds, you'll see that it automatically refreshes with the data. And then from here, what we can do is we will add a new task. So we'll just say follow up on order. We'll copy that, paste, select a due date. So let's say that's a week out. We're just going to check to see where our timer is. So right now we're at, 10 seconds. We're going to do it after it refreshes the data set here. So from here, we're going to click save and close. And then we're going to click the manual refresh. So you see how we can trigger it through the manual refresh or it automatically refreshes. So it gives that user that ability to see that data, the latest data, every 15 seconds in our case, but they don't have to manually click the refresh button. So this is a great way for if users happen to leave their screen, come back, the latest data set will be available to them on the screen.